This is the MuseTex Y6. You can purchase it from Amazon for $99, and it comes with not one, not two, but three 120mm fans pre-installed. However, they are non-RGB fans. Hi, this is E-Rock on Tech, and today I'm sharing my build experience in the MuseTex Y6. Now let me go ahead and point out the elephant in the room. This is obviously another heavily Lian Li inspired case. And you know what? There's nothing really wrong with that. Lian Li came in and basically took over the PC case market almost overnight whenever they launched their O11 Dynamic. And you know what? Rightfully so. That case is phenomenal. It looks great and it's easy to build in. And that obviously led to Lian Li launching several variations of that case, larger and smaller. And talking about the smaller, we have the Lian Li O11D Mini. And honestly, I think the MuseTex Y6 can most closely be compared to that case. And because of that, I will make a lot of references to Lian Li because I think MuseTex is on to something here. I don't think this case is perfect by any means at all, and I do have a couple of very minor complaints about the case, but I think overall they are doing some things that are actually better than Lian Li, so let's talk about it. So first of all, you can get the case in black or white. You can purchase it from Amazon. Links will be down below in the video description. You can also purchase it from MuseTex's website directly. Additionally, both versions of the case do come with 3 pre-installed fans. Like I said in the intro, they are non-RGB fans, but hey, they're free fans, right? Because if you go over and you look at the Lian Li O11D Mini, it doesn't matter if you look at it in black, look at it in white. This case does not come with any fans. And Lian Li is more expensive. Yeah, sure, not significantly more expensive, but hey, more money is more money, right? So with the MuseTex Y6, the case is cheaper. It gives you basically the exact same look and feel all the way around, and it's coming with 3 pre-installed fans, so that says value, better value. So I gotta tip my hat to MuseTex there. Now, another common complaint about the Lian Li O11D Mini is the fact that it cannot support an ATX power supply. It can support an ATX motherboard, but no ATX power supply. Well, the MuseTex Y6 does support an ATX motherboard and an ATX power supply. No adapters or anything needed like that, so that is another plus for MuseTex. Previously on the channel, I talked about some Asus products like the Asus Tough Gaming Motherboard and the Asus Tough Gaming 360 AIO. And in those videos, I did complete a build inside the Lian Li O11D Mini. However, there was a massive drawback because in order to mount the Asus Tough Gaming 360 AIO to the top of the Lian Li D Mini case, I had to purchase special adapters for the fitment of the 360. Because natively speaking, if you take a Lian Li O11 Dynamic and you pair it with an ATX motherboard, you cannot put in a 360 AIO up top. You do have to buy special adapters. Well, coming back to the MuseTex Y6, that is not a problem. You can install an ATX motherboard, you can install an ATX power supply, and then on top of that, you can take a 360 AIO and mount it to the top of the case with 0 problems. And that's exactly what I did here with the CoolerMaster Atmos 360 AIO. And now let me show you all the hardware options that can fit inside the MuseTex Y6. As you can see, it can easily fit an ITX motherboard, a micro ATX motherboard, an ATX motherboard, and up top, you can fit all the way up to a 360mm radiator, and on the side you can fit another 240mm radiator if you decided to do so. On the bottom you can put in 3 120mm fans, which is exactly what I've done in my build, or you can do 2 140mm fans, and on the back for the exhaust fan you can do 1 120mm fan or 1 140mm fan. There is also support for a 120mm or a 140mm radiator if you decided to go that route. And of course, we do have to mention GPU support, and the MuseTex Y6 can fit those big beefy RTX Nvidia 40 series GPUs, no problem at all. In the front, there is a Type-C or USB 3.1 connection up to 10 gigabytes per second. There's another USB 3.0 connection, a USB 2.0 connection, your HD audio, a dedicated reset button, and of course your power button. And as you can see, it does have a dedicated hard drive bay in the back right above the power supply. And what I've seen online, as well as what I can see here in person, is that this does seem to support 2 regular size hard drives, or of course you could use 2 standard 2.5-inch solid state drives. Now, with that being said, I took mine out because I like the extra room for cable management and things of that nature. And you see, this is another advantage because with the Lian Li O11 Dynamic Mini, you can't take this out. Well, not unless you want to take a drill and push out the rivets, but it's not meant for you to take out. Whereas with the MuseTex Y6, it's just a a standard Phillips head. Okay, so the case must be perfect, right? Everybody should run out and buy the case, right? Well, hang on. There are a couple of things about the case that I don't like, and actually a few things that I do think Lian Li is still doing better. For example, my main complaint about the MuseTex Y6 is, yeah, sure, okay, you can install, you know, all the big standard size components, a 40 series GPU, an ATX motherboard, an ATX power supply, 360 radiator up top, all the things. But there is a compromise. If you decide to install an ATX motherboard, your bottom cutouts on the case for cable management are gone. They're completely covered up by the ATX motherboard. And so that means you have to take all of your cables and run them around the motherboard. And now you have this long cable coming across. And honestly, it looks awful. I can't stand it personally. And it is a huge pet peeve of mine. However, with that being said, this is easily fixable because you could just use a micro ATX motherboard and avoid this issue. Or if you really wanted to use an ATX motherboard and avoid this issue, obviously not everybody's going to use the HD audio port. So if you don't run that cable, that will definitely clear some things up. But additionally, if you put in a bigger GPU, that will help cover up some things as well. And lastly, if you don't have RGB fans on the bottom of the case, it will all be dark down there, and it will help mask all of those cables being ran across. So you do have options there, but I definitely think this was a limitation or an oversight, or maybe it was just one of those manufacturing decisions where they had to say, hey, you know, we can gain all of this stuff, but we have to sacrifice this stuff. I'm not really sure what the thinking was there, but this is something I definitely don't like about the case. Now, something else I do like about the case is that it is mostly a toolless design, meaning you don't have to unscrew anything in order to get into the case or build inside of the case. You can technically build inside the MuseTex Y6 without ever once having to use a screwdriver or any other kind of tool. However, with that being said, if you want to take off all the glass, then the front side panel, the tempered glass, is actually not toolless. For some reason, the main glass that you look into is toolless and it pops right off. The back panel is toolless and it pops right off, but the front side glass is not toolless. It has 4 screws and you have to unscrew those in order to take that glass off. Now look, on one hand, this isn't really a big deal because like I said, technically you can complete your entire build without taking off that panel or using any tools. But at the same time, it is nice to take off the panel and have that extra room to work with whenever you're completing your build. And also, who wants to take a chance on scratching the glass or breaking it? I know I don't. So it is safer during the building process to take it out. And now, if everything else is toolless, but this one piece is not, now you're having to go find a screwdriver for this one panel. And so it's a little bit of a mixed message there because obviously the marketing says, you know, a toolless design, and for the most part it is, but for this one piece, it's such an inconvenience. But it's not a deal breaker by any means at all, but I did want to let you know. Now, one other thing about the case, personally, it's very subjective. I'm not the biggest fan of it. That is the magnetic dust filter on top. I'm fine with having magnetic dust filters, but I don't think they should be your final layer of the case up top. I do think there should be some other layer of plastic or metal or something covering it, because when you just have the magnetic dust filter at the top, it slides and moves around very easily. And quite frankly, they're very easy to get dirty. And when you remove the magnetic dust filter, and if you just want to run your case without it, well, now the top doesn't really look that great. And so I feel like it's a bit of an eyesore. And so I feel compelled to leave the magnetic dust filter on there. I do wish there was a solid top to cover this up, similar to the way Lian Li does it. I do think this is one area where Lian Li is definitely doing better. Now, one final thing about the case for my experience, and this will likely vary for you, your mileage will likely vary here, is that my unit did have a couple of scratches or dents on it. Admittedly, one of the spots could have been my fault from the building process. Maybe I was a little bit too rough with it. Now, what I can say is that if you do buy the case from Amazon, and if for some reason, you know, you have damage or whatever, I can speak from experience here. Amazon's return policy is phenomenal, probably the best out there that there is, and I've never had an issue trying to return something on Amazon. So I would definitely say you can buy with confidence, but as an influencer, or however you want to word it, I do need to be transparent about my experience. And in my experience, my case did in fact have a couple of scratches and or dents on it. But now let's talk about my build experience. And so for me, I use the Asus TUF Gaming Z790 motherboard that Asus sent out to me a while back. I did a full video on it. If you want to see it, I'll have it pop up right now for you. But basically, this is the motherboard I'm using, and this is an Intel motherboard, and so I needed an Intel CPU. And so the CPU that I went with here is the Intel 14700K, and for the cooling solution, I chose to use the CoolerMaster 360 Atmos, which CoolerMaster also sent out to me a while back for review. I still technically need to make a dedicated video on that, and when I do make that video, there will be a contest I will run so that you can win your own 360 Atmos. If you're interested, get subscribed so you don't miss it. For the RAM, I have 2 sticks of DDR5 running at 6000 megahertz. For the GPU, I'm using the Nvidia RTX 3070. And now when it came to adding fans to the case, I decided to leave the original 3 fans that came with the case, but also I decided to add 3 more fans at the bottom of the case. Yeah, we kind of have a mixed match of white and black here, but honestly, it doesn't look that bad. And these are the only other fans I had, and the extra light really lit up the case. But I also have some B-roll and pictures of the case not having these fans at the bottom. And so you can see what it looks like with the extra light and without the extra light at the bottom. And now for fan configuration, the 3 fans on the bottom are going to be intake. The 3 fans up top are going to be exhaust. The 1 fan in the back will be exhaust. And the 2 fans on the side are set up to be exhaust by default out of the box. And I did perform my initial testing with that configuration. Ultimately, I did end up switching these fans to be intake because that did prove to be better for overall thermal performance, and I would recommend that you do the same. Now let's take a look at some testing. First up, I ran Cinebench R23, and I ran the multi-core test for 10 minutes, and then I ran it a few more times after that to allow for proper heat soak-in. This is a 14700K running the Intel baseline profile. As you can see, ultimately, we did experience thermal throttling. For our core temperature, our maximum reach was 90°C with an average of 75°C, and for our CPU package, our maximum reach was 91°C with an average of 84°C, and the CPU package power maxed out at 251 watts. And for those of you who may be wondering, my final score was 33,711 points. Okay, next up, I ended up testing Halo Infinite. This is at maximum settings at 1080p, and as you can see, our CPU is actually not too bad. We're mostly hovering in the mid to high 50s, occasionally touching 60°C, but quickly falling below that. The main issue is the GPU here, because as you can see, we are definitely between 78 to 79°C. That's obviously not that great. So ultimately, I did decide to remove the magnetic dust filter from the bottom of the case to allow the 3 bottom intake fans to have maximum airflow possible. And in addition to that, I did take the 2 exhaust fans on the side and I did make those intake instead. And here are the new temperatures. And as you can see, these couple of minor changes did actually impact the overall thermals, because our CPU is now in the mid to lower 50s as opposed to the mid to higher 50s like it was previously, and our GPU has come down by about 4 to 5°C. Now, I will admit this is still pretty toasty for a 3070, but I've done a full review on this card before, and I actually reviewed another case called an SOP1, which is actually a bigger case that does allow for more airflow, and even in that case, this exact same 3070 was still struggling to be below 70°C. And so I'm not going to really sit here and overly blame the temperatures of the GPU completely on the case here. I do think this specific 3070 lacks a great cooler, and I think that's what you're seeing here. Okay, so my final thoughts on the MuseTex Y6. Honestly, overall, there's nothing overly wrong with it, and there's nothing overly amazing about it. It is basically just a well-rounded, decent case. There's room for improvement, but it's not the worst case I've seen either. I mean, for 99 bucks and 3 pre-installed fans, it's not a terrible value. And the thing that I like the most about it is that I see this case growing with you. And right now, maybe you start out with a small, simple, budget build, and then over time, as your PC grows, the case can grow with you. You can switch out the fans, maybe put in some 140mm fans, maybe make all the fans RGB, maybe throw in a couple of radiators and do a full custom loop. I mean, this case can really do a lot of stuff, and so I think that is a pretty cool feature. But it doesn't matter what I think, it matters what you think. So let me know in the comment section below. What do you think about a case like this? What do you think think about videos like this? Should I keep doing it? Because honestly, videos like this don't typically perform that well. And I may not be doing this anymore in the future, but it really comes down to what you think. So drop a comment, hit the like button, get subscribed if you're new, and check out the Patreon. But other than that, that's all I got. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for hanging out with me. Thank you for your continued support. And until next time, E-Rock out.